We are enjoying our Saturday so far at Norwac. We've just had some really great lectures and about to open up the floor for our next plenary. Before we do so, we'd like to say hi from Stonehenge. Just traveled. Virtual conferences are great for that. And I thought that this would be a really great setting for our next plenary speaker. Some logistical items to cover before we introduce our next speaker. Just want to make sure we have had some questions about access to the videos. So remember, from the homepage, jumping into my conference, okay? Click on my conference, you'll have your conference links here. Jump into your Friday. Very easy for you to go ahead and scroll down here, find the lecture you're interested in. We'll jump into, well, we did Stephen for us last time. Who do we want to pick on today? Oh, let's pick on Patricia. And we'll go ahead and scroll down and see that Patricia's first lecture is posted here for you to watch. So you can press play. You'll also have some details here. So if you have questions about how to access, feel free to reach out to me. If you find me in a room, more than happy to help you out. But again, it's just click on my conference, and then you'll just go ahead and navigate to where you've been finding your Zoom links, and the video has replaced the Zoom link. Very, very simple, very simple. We also want to continue to encourage you to use the opportunity between lectures, or if you're sitting a lecture out, maybe sometimes taking in a lot of information, your brain needs a little bit of a break. Maybe stop by one of our vendor booths and have an opportunity to chat with them. The crisis is hitting all of us, and this virtual conference, it presents a very real and specific challenge for our craftspeople in the astrological community, our artisans who are out there creating beautiful things for us. So, definitely have a look at the different vendors, pop into the lounges and see what's available on offer. Maybe just stop and say hey and have conversations with the people there. Really exciting stuff for you to check out. There's a continual reminder, of course, that in every single room that you're in, it is required that you have your Zoom name aligned to the name that you registered with. We are finding that individuals are still not changing their names to match their registration name, and we're going to have to give you the boot if we need to kick you out and make sure that we've got only the people who have actually registered for the conference and to be available on these dates has access. So if there are no other questions on logistics, and I don't see anything coming through in the chat box, I will go ahead and introduce our next speaker. And very excited about introducing our next speaker. You'll all know Patricia Walsh, because she does such a beautiful and exceptional job opening up space for us at Norwac conference. When I think about Patricia, I think about that really, really beautiful, emotionally overwhelming in some moment. The commemoration we had for Maggie Nalbandian and that Patricia led for us some years ago, and opened up the circle and really felt that was my first experience having kind of a soulful circle like that. And as somebody who's not particularly spiritual, it was a really moving moment for me. And I know that looking around that room at that time, how many of us really felt like we could connect to Maggie, the matriarch of Norwac at that time. Patricia Walsh has a real gift for being able to cross very wide divides in space, time, spiritually. She helps make those distances feel so much smaller, so we have the ability to access each other and feel really close. The great thing about Patricia, she's drawing on a tremendous amount of experience. She's been in the astrological community and has more than 2 decades worth of experience, and is applying those experiences in a number of different ways. She works with deep memory process. She was part of the Evolutionary Astrology School with Jeffrey Wolf Green, which is quite, cornerstone of Northwest astrology. Is very exciting. And now she is an instructor for the Soulful School of Evolutionary Astrology. So if you have had the opportunity to study with her, you know exactly what you're in for the next hour. And welcome, Patricia. Thank you for joining.
Oh, I feel so honored for what you said, and so inadequate to fulfill what it was, the picture you just painted of me. But anyway, thank you. I'll do my best. Let me share some images with you. So here we are. Thank you for joining. This is Reimagining Astrology. And I'm going to be sharing with you some things. As Wade was saying, I have been at this for 20 plus years. I have also, one thing you didn't mention is the Kairos work that I've been doing. I founded a school of astrology called Kairos Astrology, where, drawing from my 20 plus years of working in the human psyche, and drawing from all of these great experiential schools of psychology, such as Gestalt and psychodrama, and all these different ways of plumbing the depths of the human psyche, combined with astrology and regression work, I developed a training for people where I can actually train you in methodology and how to use this combined with astrology. And some of that's what I'm going to be talking to you about. So let me just get right to it, okay? Let me get this going. So here you are practicing your art at home. Is this what you do to prepare? Is this how you see yourself? Is this how your clients see you? Maybe some of your clients see you this way. We have to think about this as astrologers. These are projected expectations. They're things that come with the craft. Thousands of years of expectations projected into. These can be silent collective, expectations, desires of us to fulfill. And just like any relationship that we're in, these silent expectations, just like in any relationship, they can cause us to conform to those expectations, right? The astrologer is sage, as mystic, as entertainer, as diviner. These are all things that may be part of what we do, but they also run the risk of limiting our art. Part of another pitfall there is that the knowledge that we share with clients comes through our own filter, as it always does. Everything we share comes through our own filter, but the interpretation always comes through the lens of the interpreter. And as we know, there's so much more potentiality in astrology. Astrology as a healing tool, a tool to expand awareness, answers a very deep need for our time, but it involves maybe some different skills and ability to modulate one's depth of engagement, and how we interface with the client. You know, I do want to say that the people come to us asking us really big questions, right? They come to us oftentimes, and sometimes. Now, I do want to point out that the client that comes to you that just is curious about what's happening in the stars is a very vastly different client that comes to you from the perspective of having some life crisis, or asking these big questions, these big why. Why am I here? What am I doing? What's the purpose of my life? And this is an image of mine, a vision of mine that I just want to share, because I feel that the role of astrology has a much larger place in, not just in the way that we practice it, but in the whole collective psyche. And this is my vision. In its noblest sense, the purpose and practice of astrology is to restore connection where there's been estrangement from oneself, from nature, and the cosmos itself, not only to bring collective cohesion, one human psyche at a time, but also to rekindle individual faith in a benevolent, harmonious, and synchronistic universe. In a world where estrangement is the norm, to restore connection to a personally meaningful universe is a profound act of service. And this, to me, is part of the potentiality. Passing knowledge to a client is only one part of what our potential is. In fact, it was Einstein that said the experience of something is much greater than the knowledge of it. And when somebody can experience the magic of the cosmos that we know, that we touch every day, that maybe even we take for granted, but if we can awaken that in our clients, right, I feel that that puts us partly on the path of this great vision. right? Of this vision of being able to be that person that heals some part of estrangement, one human psyche at a time. So when people come to us asking us these big questions, we have to keep in mind that the archetypes have their lives in us as much as we have our lives in them. And sometimes it's good to hear what the archetypes have to say on their own terms. Now, as I said, I do regular consulting astrology for 20 plus years, but I also do so many other modalities, drawing from my work in shamanic journeying and all of the different experiential schools of psychology, that I've woven those into the ways that they naturally interface with the archetypes, with astrology, and also ways to engage the depth of the human psyche, because in my experience, the subconscious is where it's at, right? The conscious mind, again, is the place where we share all that information, and it's a wonderful thing, but it's not the only thing, right? The vastness of the psyche expands well beyond the limits of the conscious mind. And so to me, like I said, the subconscious is where it's at, and that is where the archetypes reside. So we might as well find some ways, or think of ways, or engage in ways to engage those archetypes directly in their own terrain. So what I'm sharing with you is not, it's an expanded application of astrology. It's not to supplant the way that normal astrological consultations happen, but to add dimension to the position of the astrologer in the consultation process, to synthesize and therefore transcend all of these typical roles that are projected onto us as astrologers, to make those roles sacred by simply taking the position of being the midwife, being that person who holds the space for a part of another soul to be birthed into deeper awareness. The ancient people knew that you cannot correctly interpret another's dream. And their way of working with dreams, and for that matter, all inner imagery, was to provide the space, the context for the meaning to be revealed. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about Iroquois dream lodges and how that inspired psychodrama as we know it today, and then some of psychodrama's applications to astrology. So again, whatever we do, whatever we share with clients, in addition to what we do, we can step aside and be midwives. To allow that communion with the living archetypes as they're expressed through the individual. And yes, there are methods to do that, which I'm going to share with you. So one of the first ways we enter into this kind of conscious congress with the archetypes for ourselves and for others, right? Because doing it ourselves is also part of the excitement of being able to plumb into the depths of our own subconscious to find and to encounter the archetypes as they are living through us individually. It really is fascinating to do that kind of work. But one of the ways that we need to get there, especially since we're so practiced in our art, is to start to be able to forget everything that you know. And okay, that's probably not really going to be possible, but there is some deconditioning that can happen. And we're in a time of deconditioning. Pluto and Capricorn's deconditioning time. In evolutionary astrology, we consider Saturn to be not just representing external structures, but the structure of consciousness itself. So that's part of the Capricorn renovation project that I was talking about in my other lecture. And certainly with this new Pluto-Saturn synod going on, there's huge collective ramifications that we're experiencing. I mean, we are somewhere in this process of transition from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age. And the archetypes are going to mutate and transform along with that transition. this Christian sacrificial dying god's eventually going to be replaced by some Aquarian version. We don't know what that is yet. But what I do notice is that in New Age and metaphysical circles, we may already may already have intimations of what this new divinity is going to look like. You know, in New Age circles, we say thoughts create reality, right? Well, we can see that already. We can, and this may be, it's a very Aquarian concept. In fact, Uranus Aquarius rules the causal plane, where thought and manifestation is instantaneous. This is also why in modern astrology, Uranus is given to astrology, because it reflects that, what I call, it's not my word, but Kairos, right? That space like Jung was talking about, where synchronicity happens, where this moment right here, this moment, this place happens, right? So in our time, though, we're already seeing the effects of collective thought manifesting in reality. So since Trump's been in office, how many times have you heard the word unprecedented? I know I have, and I'm really sick of it, actually. Since the advent of social media, how many times have you heard the term going viral? And then now, quite possibly, we have an unprecedented virus. And there's a slew of other natural events that are unprecedented, both in the natural and the man-made worlds. I think that as we are approaching this Aquarian age, whatever space we are in the transition of the ages, I think we need to start to pay attention more to what we think, huh? So as we're transitioning in these ages, the archetypes themselves are evolving. And we're not going to be able to perceive the nascent evolution expression of these archetypes unless we suspend some of our own knowing and allow them to reveal their evolving selves to us. One thing to keep in mind is that planetary consciousnesses are not only mega human beings. I mean, we have depicted them that way as gods and goddesses, and we know them, but we know them, knowing them on that level is only a one-way street. It's, you know, God created in human image, or goddess created in human image. It's anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism can bring us into relationship, it can bring us somewhat into relationship with something that we perceive outside of ourselves, but all we're looking at is a projection of us, or even just a slice of a projection of us as the center of the universe. So we might want to risk forgetting ourselves some and taking our often subconscious superiority out of the equation. The magic of connection happens when we are in wonder, when we're open, when we're receptive to something different, equal, or greater than ourselves. One way to begin to bypass this way of relating is to get out of thinking into feeling. Sensation does not lie. The head can conjure much more than I don't want to say real, because I don't want to discount any realities as unreal, because the power of imagination is what I'm talking about. But the conscious mind can conjure things that are beyond veracity, I guess would be a way of saying that. Whereas the body, whereas sensation doesn't lie, feeling into the cosmic logos and archetypal consciousnesses takes practice, and perhaps some deconditioning is involved, specifically because we've ascribed meaning to these beings for thousands of years. But just because a collective consciousness saw Mercury as a winged messenger some thousands of years ago doesn't mean that's what Mercury is all about. I mean, maybe the messenger has more to convey if we listen with beginner's mind and really open our imagination. I wrote in my book, Understanding Karmic Complexes, about I-thou relationships versus I-it relationships, drawn from the understanding of the philosopher Martin Buber. And basically what he's saying is that we are unpracticed in the ability to form I-thou relationships. We form much more I-it relationships. And in that regard, you know, think about it. Have you ever just met somebody or something without having some subconscious expectation of your own wants or needs being met? Or have you met, even more, have you met somebody or some event or something without a projection of how you think that person, thing, or event is? So what I'm talking, and the answer is probably no. You know, we might do it sometimes, but the majority of our way of functioning is through a lens of our projections as well. What I'm talking about here is knowing these archetypal beings as they reveal themselves to us. And there's many ways as astrologers that we already do this. And in fact, this is what I love and cherish about our soulful science. It's how we're so astounded when we see archetypal beings manifesting in our lives or in collective events. I love that we're so astonished every time that happens, as if it's the first time it ever happened, when we can see the archetypes living, breathing, expressing themselves. That to me is an honoring of what we don't know. And it illustrates that place, this place, right here, Kairos, where magic happens. I have a phrase in my work because I work with the subconscious so much, and the subconscious, like I said, is the realm of archetypes. And it's a constant state of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And my phrase that I'm known for, anybody who's worked with me or been in my trainings, is you can't make this shit up. And in fact, we even have a t-shirt for it in one of my trainings. So how blessed are we? How blessed are we as astrologers that we stand at this threshold between the archetypes and the human experience of them, and that we get to be in that role, like I said, not just of midwife, but interpreter. That's such a sacred role. All right, let's talk consciousness. This is an old model. Some of you have seen me use this before, but it's a really useful model to understand the terrain. And it's Freud, but I throw in some Jung because Freud's boring, all alone on his own. There's 3 levels that I'm just illustrating here with Freud's iceberg model. Daytime, which is rational consciousness; twilight, which is also called preconscious; and nighttime, which is called irrational. Daytime consciousness here is the conscious mind. It's comprised of everything you're aware of in this moment. You're using it right now. Thoughts, sensations, memories, they're all easily recalled here in this domain of the conscious mind. In daytime consciousness, life is very easily defined, right? It's the sunlight's out. The sunlight of awareness fully illuminates the environment. You can see things clearly. Everything's readily perceived, and more so, you can navigate the world with ease. Things make sense. Primarily, it's rational, right? And we're used to living in this part of our consciousness most of the time because life makes sense here. So, but we can notice that this is only 10 to 20% of the totality of our consciousness. Since the conscious mind's job is to help us navigate life, to survive in the world, it is highly protective of its territory. Any experiences that don't, that don't fit into the conscious's agenda of keeping you safe and helping you navigate the world, it rejects and it suppresses into the subconscious, into the unconscious mind here. The conscious mind's like our ego. It's very protective. It wants consistent, rational reality. When something's irrational, like an unwanted emotional reaction or a shadow part of yourself, it gets cast away. Twilight consciousness here is like a membrane between the realms of the conscious and the unconscious. It's permeable, it's bidirectional. Preconscious, also called the preconscious mind, has latent memory stored here that's not being used immediately, like conscious content that you may have an easy recall for, but it's not taking up the screen of your awareness right now. A good analogy of it is like a browser cache. Another good analogy is like the beach. And the sand on the beach is like the conscious mind. It's known terrain. It shifts because our thoughts shift a lot, right? Our conscious mind thoughts are always shifting, but it's terrain that we know, and it's solid and it's grounded. We can keep our feet on it. And the deep sea has always been a kind of analogy for the depths of the subconscious, right? It looks kind of enticing and glittering on its surface, but there's a hint of fear of what lurks below. And this shoreline place, this is a very special place. This is where the land meets the sea. This is a liminal space. It's the place between the worlds. It's like, very much like the twilight consciousness, like the preconscious mind. And it's a passageway to either way. So if you're standing on the shoreline and you think of that ever-changing shoreline with the tide coming and going and the waves coming and going, you can either enter into the sea from that space or go onto land. And this is much what our when we are engaged in twilight consciousness, this is what we're able to do. It's like, well, Hermes is a god of this place, right? Hermes is the liminal god of boundaries and crossings. Hermes is the psychopomp. He has the ability to travel between the terrestrial world and the world of Hades, the underworld. He's the god of liminal places. Very much like twilight mixes day and nighttime, and it softens the awareness. It softens, shadows, and it makes things more watercolor when it's twilight. And that gives us, by engaging in twilight consciousness, that gives us passage into the subconscious. Now, the subconscious mind, I'm sure we're all pretty aware of. This is, the depths where, as Freud talked about, these are the things that Freud saw belonging to the subconscious. Latent and largely unavailable material gets stored there. Generally, when we contact the subconscious mind, we do it in some therapeutic model, right? Usually it's the depth psychology or even through dreaming or even daydreaming can reveal contents of the subconscious, as does journeying. But it can also surface unwanted, like when we're triggered with something, when we get taken over by some rage or some fear and we're surprised. And we say things like, whoa, what came over me? Or I was beside myself with anger and grief. Something that's in the subconscious that's been repressed, that gets cast into the underworld, pokes through, right? It kind of pokes through this membrane of the twilight consciousness, of the preconscious, into the conscious mind, and just shows like a tip of itself to the conscious awareness. Part of the reason why the conscious awareness can't deal with it is because it's irrational. Right? Your dreams are irrational. The content of many fears that belong there are irrational. But I'm only saying that from the conscious mind's perspective, because to me, like I said, the subconscious is where it's at. That's where the juice is. The irrational is where the juice is. Just like the engaging of dream figures or the engaging of mythical figures, because in all of this terrain, this is where the archetypes live, right? Now, Jung separated from Freud largely about this, partly about this model. Jung went to go visit a tribe in Africa, and tribespeople described to him this understanding that they had in the difference between big dreams and little dreams. And when he was very intrigued by that, and when they further explained it to him, they said that, big dreams have like relevance for the collective or for the whole tribe, where little dreams are about the individual. And Jung instantly was like, bingo, that's it. The difference between the collective subconscious and the individuated subconscious. And so as Jung developed his ideas about the collective subconscious, this is where this brings him to understanding that this is where the archetypes live. So we have a personal unconscious and a collective unconscious. When we probe into our personal unconscious through twilight consciousness, we have access to the collective unconscious. Okay. Interestingly, also, in some depth psychology, the body is considered to be a passageway to the subconscious, because it's the most subconscious element. There's so much happening within our body that we're unaware of, that's happening subconsciously. But Wilhelm Reich said that whatever is unexpressed in the psyche condenses in the body, just like whatever is unexpressed or able to be expressed through the conscious mind gets repressed in the subconscious. One of the ways to access this, one of the primary, or what I have found in if I've learned anything of 20 years of working with the human psyche, it's that the marriage of image, emotion, and sensation body, or called affect, combined is the royal road to the subconscious. So let me say that again. Using together image, emotion, body, affect, that is the royal road to the subconscious. And again, I'm talking about accessing the subconscious therapeutically. Okay. We need to just briefly talk about imagination, and then I want to get on to an exercise. Where are we on time? I just need to check. Can somebody tell me?
You have about 30 minutes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
because I want to leave time for exercise here.
Okay.
So it's been said in the transpersonal worlds that the language of the soul is myth and metaphor and imagery and story. And it's also been said that imagination is the shaman's greatest tool. And I would expand that to say that imagination is the astrologer's greatest tool also. But we have to think of imagery first. Our daily life, it's been said, our daily life is filled with imagery from TV and advertising and billboards and social media and you name it, and it's out there. 50 to 1,000 images a day are impressed upon our psychic space. And part of the problem here, or a huge part of the problem there, is that it's all other people's images. This is what this Native American author was saying here, Momaday, when he said, we are what we imagine. Our very existence consists in our imagination of ourselves. The greatest tragedy that can befall us is to live a life unimagined. To live a life unimagined is to live a life full of other people's images. We don't need more of suggested imagery. We need to reunite with the wellspring, this deep wellspring of our own creative imagination. I actually think it's part of our personal salvation and collective salvation. And as we know, all things start in the imagination. We might even say that the divine logos, or the creator, or the whatever you want to call the cosmos, first imagined everything that is into creation. And in fact, this is why Australian Aboriginal creation stories talks in depth about the dream time, right? The place where we participated of the dreaming into incarnation, and where the ancestors still live, continuing to dream and imagine our reality into incarnation. Okay, these are some methodologies. I'm not going to have time to get into each one of these, but these are methodologies that we can draw from, that I have drawn them. Like I said, I put them together in a training. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do a Kairos training this year. I will do a webinar, a 4-part webinar on working specifically with imagery with clients and how to guide and conjure imagery sessions and how to guide them so that they're therapeutic and revealing. The regular Kairos training involves 4 days, a couple months webinars, and then a 4-day experiential retreat. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that this year because you have to do the stuff in person. But it draws from all of these schools: imagery, Jungian active imagination, shamanic journeying, Gestalt dialogue, psychodrama, astrodrama. Like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about Iroquois dream work. In Iroquois dream work, and I used to live in upstate New York right next to the Moreno Theater. Moreno was the founder of psychodrama and used to do psychodrama in the original Moreno Theater. He was inspired by the Iroquois and their dream lodge work. And what would happen in a dream lodge is somebody would have a dream that they didn't understand, and they'd bring it to the dream lodge. And in the dream lodge, people would spontaneously, other members of the tribe would stand up and enact the dream to give it embodiment, which is part of Gestalt too. It's a Gestalt technique, is to conjure an image and then become the image, right? So that it reveals a deeper meaning. Again, direct content, direct access to the subconscious. And so in psychodrama, Moreno took this from the Native American people and put it into a kind of a theater, right? And we can do that. We do that in astrodrama as well. The way that I do astrodrama is distinctly with a therapeutic blend, actually drawing more from, Bert Hellinger drew from Moreno in his constellation work. And when I do astrodrama, it has more of that flavor of Hellinger's findings of how different parts of the psyche get expressed, or different parts of an event. It's the same with the chart. The chart itself is a gestalt, right? Everything is seeking an integration. This is the founder of Gestalt, Fritz Perls. This was his belief, that the psyche is a gestalt. And when we look at the chart is a gestalt experience. Everything seeking integration, yet it's not all fully there. We know there's a lot more to be said on that. So I want to give you an example of a client I worked with, and then we'll go right into an imagery exercise. I need to move myself here from here. Okay. So this is a client that came to me. We can see here Mercury, Pluto, Scorpio, a whole bunch of stuff in Scorpio. And in evolutionary astrology, for sure, Pluto and the nodes are going to be the bottom line of how we look at a chart. So this client came to me, and we can see that they're both in Scorpio in the 9th house. And Pluto is the ruler of the south node. So this client came to me, non-astrologer, overtaken with fear and suspicion. I mean, I know, come on, it's pretty literal, right? He felt confused. I'm reading from my client notes. He felt confused about what was real and what was not real. He felt his whole life, he said, I feel my whole life there's danger around me all of the time. And he said, it's like I'm always looking out with my mind. My mind's in overdrive, trying to figure it all out. And he was really mentally exhausted by it all, and he wanted it to stop. So we can look at Mercury, a new phase conjunction here to Pluto, and kind of infer just rather quickly that instinct is where it's at for this client, right? A new phase conjunction is like an Aries conjunction. It's instinctual. There's something entirely new, but it also means that he doesn't have a lot of facility with it. If we take into account past life experiences, something new is starting here. So it was clear to me that this client needed to feel the power of instinct working for him rather than working against him. And I wrote in my book too about the Pluto and Scorpio and that generation, that they came in with a sense of Armageddon consciousness, largely because they had so many past life experiences of total wipeouts, right? So that consciousness is just permeating him. And here is this new phase conjunction kind of showing a potentiality for him that he had yet to access, the power of that instinctual union of Mercury and Pluto. So I had him start to just get into an imagery. I thought, oh, I'm going to isolate that and we'll work with that. So he came into an image of a silver snake on the wet ground, making an imprint in the mud as it's sliding along like an S. So I'm using Gestalt and psychodramatic techniques here, as well as active imagination. And I'm saying to him, is it day or is it night? And he goes, well, it's nighttime. It's moonlight. I can't see it clearly. How does that make you feel? And he said, I'm unsure. I'm scared. I feel dread in my stomach. So I asked him to focus on the dread. And he said, well, I feel dread. It's uneasy, but I'm also intrigued. And I think to myself, great. We have two things, right? And we're talking about Mercury, so that's perfect. Plus we have Mercury and Pluto. So dread and intrigue, perfect. I'm like, we're onto something. So now I start to apply some Gestalt techniques with him, and I say, okay, let's start to have a dialogue. In Gestalt, you can dialogue between different parts of the psyche, different elements of any thing that you set up to look at. So I said to him, okay, what's the uneasy part? And he says, well, I can't see it clearly. It's dangerous. Is it a snake? And I said, okay, let's feel into the intrigued part. And he said, well, I want to see where the snake is going. It's like it knows it's going somewhere. It's like it has a purpose. Think of that, 9th house. And he said, and I want to follow it. I said, okay, let's do that. So we go one step further, and I have him embody the snake. This is, again, more Gestalt. And so I give him time to kind of become the snake. And he's becoming the snake. And he says, wow, these are my quiet notes. I feel flexible. I feel the wet, the mud. It's comforting. It's like I'm so close to the ground. It's like we're one. I never felt so real. And then he says, big, I know where I'm going and I'm not afraid. And he goes, it sounds weird, but I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's like I'm not alone in the journey. So you could see we're getting somewhere. So we follow the snake, or he becomes the snake and continues on the journey. And I said, where are you going? And he said, well, as the snake, he comes out onto this highway and it's wet and it's night and the cars are going by with the headlights. And as the snake, he sticks his neck out or head out into the traffic. And this whoosh of the car comes by, but he has his little tongue out and he's sensing it, right? And he pulls his head back before the car whooshes, because it's like he can sense the pressure coming. And he pulls back, and I say, how does that feel? Because he's describing his experience. And he said, oh, I'm very smart. I'm very clever. I can see in the dark, but not with my eyes, but with my senses. And then he said, but, and all of a sudden, I'm not afraid anymore. It feels like I'm equipped, I'm powerful. And so at this moment, because he was embodied, a really incredible thing actually started to happen. He went into a little bit of what Wilhelm Reich calls body streaming. Lots of sensations and ripples started coming through his body. So again, I'm not going to describe all that, but I worked with him and he went through a huge emotional release. What was happening was when Reich talks about a psychic armoring or something, either psychic or physical, falling away from the body, the suppressed, libidinal, healthy, erotic energy rushes into the place that had been deadened, that had been defended and protected. So all of this psychic tension that he's had about being on overdrive of trying to see danger before it's coming was releasing in his psyche, and the emotional release left open this space where this energy just started rippling through his body. That is an experience of an archetype, right? That is an experience of an intentionality that even if I knew the chart or didn't know the chart, he's living that level of the archetype. And the potentiality of that was released into his consciousness, as Einstein said, as experience, right? Not just the knowledge of it, but the experience of it. And then he said, and we processed and blah, blah. He said, I realize now that I can trust my knowing without it taking over me. I am one with the knowing. And if you look at that beautiful intentionality of this in the 9th house, right? That's it. That was only a 20-minute journey. So you see what can happen, right? Okay. So I would like to take you, probably not as intense as that one would be. I had a different exercise for the in-person Norwac, but since we're not in the same room together, we'll work with imagery as well as we can. I mean, imagery we can work with, but the embodiment of it, maybe not so much. So to get us there, what I want to do is I want you to, some of you have done this exercise with me before, but I want to take you through this exercise of softening the mind. So what we're going to do is I want you to simply look across the room that you're in and find one single spot. Just whatever it is that draws your attention. It could be a light switch, a book, a statue, something. And I want you, but make sure it's a single spot. And I want you to look at that spot, intensely look at that spot. Take it in. Really, really focus on it. Bring all of your awareness into looking at that spot. Take in its detail, its texture, its color. And just become aware of the intensity of how you're focusing on that. And then as you're doing that, I want you to start to soften your gaze and open your peripheral vision. Keep your eye on that spot that you're looking at, yet now start to take in the information that's in your peripheral field. Start to soften your eyes and look. What's in the periphery? And notice that. And while you're doing that, I want you to become aware of what's happened to your consciousness. Generally, when we do this, we soften our conscious mind and we start to enter into a little bit of a twilight space. We've tapped in somewhat to twilight consciousness here. And it's a shame, it's been said, that with our hyper focus on, with our technology in front of us, our phones and our computers, that we've lost this spatial awareness. And unfortunately, this spatial awareness around us is also synonymous with awareness of others and empathy. And if you've ever recently been to the grocery store or something, you realize people have lost their peripheral vision. It's a sad state of our world, the unawareness of others. But when you hold this image, this focus in front of you and this soft space around you, you can feel your mind start to relax. Maybe even your breath softens. So in that state now, I think what we're going to do is we will explore the energies of this all-encompassing Pluto-Saturn synod that we're in. but we're going to let them come and express to us how they want to express to us. Now, Einstein said that we have made the master, we have made the servant the master, meaning we let the conscious mind take the lead when our more holistic, intuitive mind should be leading us. So I'm going to let you use your conscious mind to start, because we have to let it have its say, and then it can gently calm down. So we're going to use our conscious mind as the gateway, and then allow deeper content to arise. So I want you to look at this image of Saturn, again, knowing that Saturn and Pluto are joining in Capricorn. And I want you to look at this image of Saturn. And I want you to start to maybe make some mental associations that you know of the qualities of this. It's structure, it's discipline, it's responsibility. Just let your conscious mind give you some ideas of this Saturn that you know as you're focusing on Saturn. And close your eyes. And as you're thinking of those qualities, contemplating some of the qualities of Saturn, I want you to start to just open up your feeling about those qualities. Open up your sensate awareness. And maybe your body starts to get some sensations. You know, Saturn can be constricting, limiting. Maybe you want to move your body a little bit to give some expression to what that feeling and somatic feeling is bringing up for you as we stretch our consciousness into this Saturn and Capricorn archetype. And now we're going to ask for a personification of all of that you're thinking and feeling to come. An image, it could be a person, a being, an animal, but a personification of this Saturn in Capricorn to appear in your mind's eye. And just let this image show itself to you. Let this being reveal itself to you. This Saturn in Capricorn being. And let that, just let that being be there, and don't be discouraged if you're not seeing things in technicolor and vivid. Not everybody's inner imagery is like that. Don't mistrust what comes, even if it's just a flash, or even if it's just a knowing. That is the most common inner sense. Trust it. Allow your imagination to have its own veracity, its own truth. So whatever comes to you as this personification of Saturn in Capricorn, let it be. And now we're going to put that being over here on the left in your mind's eye. And just let that being stay there. And now we're going to move over to Pluto. We're going to think about Pluto. If you want, you can open your eyes and look at the image again, or you can just take in and let your mind start to free associate all of those qualities that you know about Pluto, probing and mystery in the underworld and secrecy and depth and all of those words that might come to you about Pluto, and then thinking about Pluto and Capricorn, and just let your conscious mind free associate everything that we know about Pluto that you know. And now let your feelings start to come about some of these words that are coming to you. They may evoke a feeling, a sensation. Focus on that. And let those feelings and sensation, and maybe your body makes some movements that's Pluto-like, or whatever's coming from you, you can give it some expression. And let those things start to lend itself to an inner image, and you're going to ask in your consciousness for a personification of this Pluto and Capricorn being to appear in your mind's eye, over here on the right. Become aware of this being, however it shows itself to you. And then remember, we have the Saturn being over here. Bring your attention now to both of them. And one of the ways of working with imagery here is to state your intention. So let's ask these beings to show us what is the intention you want us to know, see, show, experience, learn from you as you two are conjuncting, as you two have started this new synodic cycle for us. And see what happens as they start to come together, how they interact, what they might say or communicate to you, what they might show you. Just let it happen. If you need, ask them further questions. You can also ask them, because they have a place in your chart individually, what is it that they want you to know? What is their intention in your life right now? And ask these beings, thank them for what it is that they're saying, showing, doing for you, sharing with you. And ask them, what do you want from me? And thank them. Thank them for being here, for showing up for you, for imparting whatever it is that they've given to you. And the good thing about what we've done here is that this is recorded, and you can come back and watch this again and do this exercise again. Or use it with any planets that you want in your chart or that are happening in the sky. So if they release something really profound to you and meaningful, another step that you might want to do from here is create something from what they've given you. I have my own journey I did here, which I actually still have to do. Just create some memento from whatever it is. Like I remember I had an image that of a planet I was working with, and it showed up as one of those God's eye that we used to make in camp, in Girl Scout camp, with the whatever they were, those sticks, and then you make it with yarn. And it was a big part of my imagery, and there was all of this wisdom and understanding that came from that encounter. So I made a God's eye afterwards, went out and got the materials and made one, and I have it hanging in the other room. And so sometimes that's also a way to honor the image, because this is one thing that the native people know in working with imagery and dream states, that these are real beings. This is a real world. I know our modern rationalistic, reductionist, materialistic society doesn't think so, but we know that, right? These are living beings. And so to honor this kind of congress that you have with them. I'd also really love to hear from people and their stories, or their images, but I know we don't have time now. But like Laura said, I think we can leave the room and then come back. And I'd really love to hear, because I'm doing research. You know, I wrote a book on Understanding Karmic Complexes, 10 years of research of people's own experiences in regression therapy that I then combined with evolutionary astrology to understand how the archetypes work, rather than to subscribe a meaning to the archetypes. I took it's called phenomenological research. I took the information from tens of thousands of people's own past life experiences under regression. I'm doing the same here because I know that we are in this age. We're in an age where the archetypes are changing, mutating. We don't know what the new forms are going to be, right? We're collectively dreaming them. So I'm starting I have been starting a new phase of phenomenological research, of understanding that through some of this methodology, and there'll be another book in the making. So am I at time?
Hello? Yes.
Yes, you are.
I am at time.
We didn't want to interrupt you because, yeah, you're perfect.
Thank you.
She is, isn't she?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfectly wonderful.
Okay, and look, because I don't have my time here, but when I stop my screen share, I can see, look at that. I am like so on time for once.
For you, that is very on time.
I mean, I thought I had to be at least 20, 30 minutes over.
No, you did great.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And again, people can go back and do those exercises. So I think you said you have to close the room and then we come back.
I do need to close the room so I could capture this video. That's the way that works. So everybody come on back. You can chat with
I
Patricia.
really want to hear your stories. So please, we'll leave
back.
and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Yeah,
okay?
just a few minutes. Takes me not very long. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.